This is the area that we're gonna put our raised bed. So we're gonna build a raised bed to go right over this here. We've grown cassava and sorrel in this bed in the past. We're gonna fill it up with soil. We're gonna actually build the whole bed. I'm gonna show you guys step by step how we do it. And then down here where we've got some sugarcane growing, we're gonna clear out this area here. And this is gonna become the new cassava bed. We're gonna grow it right in the ground here. So we got a lot of work to do today. So stay tuned. Hey guys, we're here in Lowe's and we've got these 2x10s here, which are perfect. We're gonna stack two on top of each other. That'll get us our beds to be about 20 inches high. Now, this is pressure treated wood. I know a lot of people are afraid of pressure treated wood. You shouldn't be. In 2004, they stopped using arsenic in pressure treated wood, so it's perfectly safe. If you're still worried, you can put a liner inside. I don't worry about it at all. If your wood is less than 20 years old, you don't have to worry about it having the arsenic in it. It's perfectly safe. And if you use non-treated wood, it really is not going to last very long. My beds that I've made 8 years ago with treated wood are still perfectly fine. They've probably got at least another 10 years left. We're going to get 4 pieces of this. The other thing is, we normally don't want your beds to be any more than about 4 feet wide so you can reach across. But this bed, we're actually going to put rows in it, and we're going to be able to walk through the rows. All right? Let's get our wood. So we want to look for pieces that are pretty straight, not a lot of defects in them. Now, at the same time, we're not building a Sistine Chapel, so they don't have to be perfect. So don't spend a whole ton of time trying to find that perfect piece of wood. And that's moderately straight, it's gonna be fine. So for screws, we're gonna get these 3-inch wood screws. You know, I'm not a carpenter or a builder. These seem to work pretty good for me, and they don't really split the wood either. So we're gonna give these a go. So at $14 each with the nails, everything came out to $131, which is what's going to be our initial investment into this raised bed. We still got to buy our soil, and we're probably going to get some cow manure, some black cow, and maybe some compost as well to add in there as well. All right, guys, so we've got everything we need. We've got our tools, we've got our drill over there, we've bought our screws, we've got our wood. That's pretty much everything we're gonna need. But before we get started, there's a couple things that you should know about raised beds. You know, one, if you're in an area where you have things like gophers or moles or things like that, you're gonna wanna put a bottom on it. I don't have to worry about that. That's not a problem here in Central Florida, but you can put like a mesh lining. You can even put like the blackout that you use for weed, like a weed barrier. Some people really want some mesh or something metal underneath there just to prevent them from being able to chew through it. It's not an issue that I've had to deal with, so I don't really know a ton about it, but a lot of people like to have that bottom just so things can't come up from the bottom. I like to have it just be soil because I want to use that soil underneath here as well. Secondly, make sure that you put it in a place where you know is going to get adequate amounts of sunlight. Now, unfortunately in my yard, it's mostly oak trees, so this is the side of the yard that gets light in the morning, and the other side gets it in the afternoon. So I'm gonna have things in here that don't really need a whole ton of sunlight. Next, you really don't want your beds to be much more than 4 feet wide, and that's because it's gonna be hard to reach through, and you really don't wanna step into your beds unless you're gonna do rows. So what we're gonna do with this bed, because it's down here, is we're gonna actually do mounds, and we're gonna have rows that we're gonna grow in so we can actually walk through this bed without sort of walking on the areas and compressing the soil where we're actually growing crops. And last but not least, if you have a sprinkler system, you want to run your sprinkler system. First of all, make sure you're not building it over a sprinkler head. Secondly, make sure your sprinkler is able to get to every part of your bed, or else you're going to have parts of your bed that are just kind of dead areas. And last but not least, as much organic matter as you can find, get that on the ground level underneath your bed. So here we've got a lot of banana scraps and banana parts from bananas that we've chopped down, and we've got it all down here. This is gonna break down, and over time it's gonna feed the bed. Sometimes when I'm doing raised beds, I also put brush. Like we have a lot of brush piled over there. We might throw some brush in this as well, depending on how high it is. It does a couple things. One, it feeds your garden long term, but it also reduces the amount of soil that you have to buy. And over time, that's gonna break down. It's gonna feed the soil for a long-term sort of nutrient flow. Now, We've done the cassava bed down here. We did that earlier this morning where we basically just sort of got rid of all the weeds, and now we just have the soil down there. We're going to add some topsoil to that as well. We've just used natural wood to sort of create a barrier around it. When we're done everything, I'm going to show you everything in detail, but let's get started. Let's start building this bed. So we are here on some very uneven ground. Now, once again, I am not a master builder, so I'm sure there's going to be people on here that build stuff that are going to tell you that I'm doing stuff not in the most ideal way. This is the way that I had in the past and had good success. So I'm going to put both of my screws I'm going to put in here in right now. And I'm trying to put them about maybe an inch away because we know we have 2-inch wood, right? So we want to get at least an inch into the wood here. All right. This is the part that's a little bit tricky, especially on this first one. You want it to be pretty even. So, and I'll use whatever leverage I need to get this thing pretty even. Once again, I'm not building the Sistine Chapel, so I don't have to be perfect. But I want to get this lined up at a right angle. This is really a two-man job. If you have 2 people for this, you're going to be a superstar. All right, we got that pretty leveled right there. Got in just a little bit. All right. Once again, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. We've got a pretty good joint there. We're gonna go around and we're gonna do this, but we're gonna alternate. So this piece is going this way on here. On the other side, the piece is gonna come from here. I'll show you what that means at the end. Okay, so we've got the ground layer done. And what I meant was we're gonna go with this board being on the outside here, but then when we come down, that board is not gonna be on the outside. That board is going to be on the inside, and this board is going to be on the outside. And then on the other side, it's going to switch again. And that just gives you a little more stability. So this is what we got for our frame. It is 8x8. And like I said, we're going to put a row in the middle here. So it's really going to be like 2, 4-foot beds with a space in the middle that we can walk through. All right, then we're going to move it and put it right down up against this cassava bed that we just built. So this is our finished bed. This is our cassava bed where we'll plant our cassava. We cleared out this area this morning. So a couple things. Now, this is very secure on its own. This is really heavy. It's not going anywhere. But if you're unsure or if you want a little reinforcement, you can take 2x2s or even 2x4s and you can put them in the corner and just drill them in. That'll make it a little more secure. I have a ton of bamboo here, so I might make some bamboo stakes and just stake out each corner. But this is fine how it is. We're gonna go ahead and fill this up with some brush from that brush pile over there. And then we're gonna have to get our soil. Okay, so we've got a bunch of branches, some brush in there, some logs, some rotted logs, and I think our bed is ready for our soil. We might throw a little bit more stuff in here as we go, but for now I think we're good. Now we just gotta go get some soil. So when you're making your bed, you can make it 1 level, you don't have to make it 2 levels. I decided to show you guys what a 2 level would look like. You can put supports in the corners if you want. You could take a 2x2 and you could put that in each corner and just sort of drill it in. These are pretty stable. They're very heavy. They don't move. I've never really put anything on them before. And with this one, just to show, I put a couple of bamboo stakes in the corners for extra added support. But once the soil's in here, it's really not necessary. And that's the next step. So now the hard part. We've got a truckload of soil. And we got to take that all the way down the hill, down by the lake there. Okay, our bed is pretty much done. We've got our garden bed here. We've got our cassava bed down here. This was 2 cubic yards of soil that I had to move all the way from up the hill using that wheelbarrow over there. I am totally exhausted, but we got the soil in. We're going to put a layer of mulch on top. And then we're going to decide what we're going to plant in this bed. I also added something in here. I added a little crosswalk in here, just so I can walk across this bed without walking right directly in the soil, because you don't want to compress your soil. So that's why we normally make the beds only 4 feet wide. But this was a space here where I needed a big bed, so I made an exception. And because of that, I put the little pathway in there so I could walk across it. So next step, we're going to add in a little bit of black cow. We're going to just mix in some cow manure, and we'll go from there, guys. All right. So the last step for me before planting in my bed is to mulch the bed. Now, some people don't mulch the bed. I think that soil uncovered loses nutrients. So I'm all about covering the bed. It's going to help retain moisture too, so you won't have to water your bed as much, especially a bed this far away from the sprinkler and from hoses. I'd love for this to retain water as best as possible. Also, this mulch is going to break down and eventually feed the soil and improve your soil. So it's like an organic, natural fertilizer for your garden as well. And it will also help keep the weeds down. So you're going to get a lot of benefits from mulching your bed. I just think it's a must, something that you have to do. And remember, pitchfork, easier to move mulch. Even this mulch here, which is basically almost soil, because it's about a year old. So this mulch is basically broken down into basically topsoil at this point, or really nutrient garden soil. And we're just gonna use this to cover this bed up. And then I wanna show you guys a bunch of different beds that I have here and why they are the way they are and the advantages and disadvantages of each one. The next step in sort of having a raised bed is deciding what you want to plant in your raised bed. Now, I always say plant something that's easy to start off with. I would lean towards starts instead of getting a lot of things from seed. There's certain things that we will talk about that are really easy to grow from seed, but a lot of your brassicas or your cabbages and kales and things like that, a lot of times starts are going to be a shortcut and kind of an easier way for a beginning gardener to sort of get started. I chose onions. I was in Lowe's and I saw these onions. It's only $4.98 and you have 70 plants here. So onions are a thing that we always can use. So I'm gonna go plant these onions, and all we're gonna do, these are onion starts. I have some onions growing in other parts of the yard and other raised beds from seed, but we're gonna grow these ones from starts. And all we're gonna do is just stick these in the ground. We're gonna space them out probably about maybe 8 to 10 inches apart. And we're gonna put all 70 in this bed here. All right, so let's take a look at some of these beds here. This was one of the first beds that I created. And the mistake that I made was I made the bed a little bit too big, so I wasn't able to reach all parts of the bed without walking through it. But the solution that I came up with for that is to make rows. So now I can walk through my rows and I can still have access to the bed without trampling and compressing the soil where I want my plants to grow. So that's one solution if you have a bed that's too big. And you notice this is just one layer. It's probably about a 2x10, and it's perfectly fine. You don't have to go 2 layers with the beds. We just did that for demonstration purposes. It was a lot more work, so I'm kind of wishing I didn't. But here we have another bed, and this one is 2 layers. And this one is, we have some asparagus in here and a little bit of lettuce. But this bed's been here for about 8 years, and the wood is still perfectly fine. It's a little stained. It gets a lot of water here because the sprinkler hits it. And all these beds are lined up here because this is as far as the sprinkler from the lawn goes. So that was part of my planning when I planted these. This is a perfect size bed here. This is a 4x10 bed, and it's perfect because I can reach all the way across the bed. Same with this one and same with this one. So I think I learned a little bit when I started making these beds here. Now this is a raised bed that was purchased before I even really got into gardening. My wife bought this for a herb garden, and it's really good because it's high enough that you don't really have to bend over. So having a bed that's high can have its advantages as well. Now, My wife wanted some beds that were sort of in front of the tree line, but she wanted some very pretty beds. So a friend of mine who's a carpenter actually built these beds, and these beds are a little bit more fancy, but they are a little higher as well, so you're not bending over quite as much. So that's the advantage of that. We've got 3 of them here. We've got our tomatoes, we've got our cabbage, we've got potatoes. Those are the things we have growing in here currently right now. And then we're gonna go down the hill here, and I just wanna show you guys a couple of other ideas for beds that I've made in the past. Now, you can make a bed that is completely in the ground as well, especially if you live in a place with good soil. In Florida, it's a little tougher because our soil is so poor, but this is a bed here where I grow ginger. And I just basically took some wood and lined it up. We're gonna have to pull some weeds out of here, but ginger comes up in here every year and we harvest ginger from it. We're gonna go down here. Now, as a content creator, I get offered a lot of things, and one of them was a metal bed. And this was a metal bed. It's the only metal bed that I have, and I really have no problem with them. I didn't have a place to put it, so I put it way down here, and I kind of neglected it a little bit. But this metal bed works perfectly fine. It doesn't overheat in the summer. It actually is a pretty good bed, and it's very durable. I think this thing will probably outlive me. But a metal bed is also an option as well. And they come in a very small package. You have to put it together. It's pretty easy to do. And then we have down through here the bed that we created, which is this bed here, which is a little different than the other beds because it's kind of big and it's also high. And then we have another bed here, an in-ground bed that we're going to use for cassava. So those are all the beds that you can use, or there's probably a lot more that you can use, but those are the beds that I've tried. And all of them have their sort of pros and cons, but you can grow with any one of them. None of them is bad. They're all perfectly good beds. And we're going to get to planting in here.